Howdy, it's been a long time since I posted on this channel. If you don't know, I've mostly been doing Twitch stream highlights on my second channel for the past while. While I still hope to use this channel as the maximum effort tier content, the videos will likely be few and far between. But I tend to ramble in my streams, and I thought I'd put together a little highlight, as I think my exploration of these topics in this particular stream were notable, but not so interesting as to dedicate time in the mainstream highlight, which will be up hopefully soon. I think it'll go nicely with the type of content that I'd like to create more often for this channel. If the taste of my philosophical explorations is to your liking, I've got a segment on my streams where I explore many topics in an attempt to rationalize my position on them. Sometimes it's responding to a video or Twitter thread, or perhaps the occasional advocating for tyrannical fictitious puritanism. If there's faulty judgment to be had, then there's a moral expedition to embark on, and I'm your explorer, for however many hours this will be permitted. Anyhow, keep in mind that for this video I may interrupt my past self with several notes expanding upon what I was saying. I've edited it in such a way to make it easy to differentiate. Oh, and apologies if my audio or voice is inconsistent. I got sick, but didn't want to delay this video any longer. Without further ado, on to the rambling. These guys are blind, so it's really easy to beat the devil out of them. I saw this video on Twitter. There were some officers who were conducting an arrest. I don't even know exactly what the context were, but they literally arrested he's legally blind. He's not like 100% blind, but he's got a walking stick, you know, guiding stick to be able to have him walk around and whatnot. He obviously doesn't have to use it all the time. Like, not only does he say so, but he's obviously walking around and he doesn't necessarily need it. I don't even know exactly what happened. It's kind of cringe, because in an ideal world, it's like you could do whatever that's in your right in front of an officer, what have you. It is within your rights as an American citizen, well, the rights that are recognized. Whether or not they're recognized is up to the country. That is a fundamental belief of mine. Inalienable human rights are inalienable human rights whether or not your country decides to recognize them. But in this particular case, the representatives of the state decided that they weren't going to respect this man's rights. Arrested him essentially for being, like, not nice, I guess, which is insane. I'm trying to remember the entire context of the thing. So additional context for this one. James Jim Hodges posted the original video publicly to his YouTube, link in description. He was walking home from jury duty, which was cancelled. Officer gets out of a vehicle. She says, "Hi there." He responds with, "Hey." She asks what he's got in his pocket. He stops, holding still, seemingly considering her question. She continues speaking briefly. He explains with this retort, and listen to her immediate response.
It's a navigational aids. What's the problem? You a tyrant?
Yeah, I am actually. What's your name and date of birth?
I expressed my dismay with this attitude among cops in my stream. I think this video was worse than I remembered. If the first thing your prideful police say when accused of tyranny, which is what she's doing here, is to say, "Yeah, sure I am," I feel like the founding fathers are stirring in their graves. And this accusation of tyranny is the only thing that caused her to escalate the situation on him. Unfortunately, as of 3 months ago, he's still fighting his legal battles. He set up a GoFundMe to assist with his legal fees, given that his impairment makes it hard for him to earn income.
This has been about civil rights violations, not about money.
He details that he was suing for as high as the state limits would allow him to.
I said the state caps, which is $200,000. They responded with, "We give you $7,500, $7,500, and that sweeps everything under the rug. These deputies don't have to worry about facing the consequences of their actions, and you, my friend, have a nice little chunk of change in your pocket." I'm sorry, that's not what I call justice.
So his case is still ongoing, but I have a lot of hope for its success. In any case, the public seem to be overwhelmingly supportive of him. But I shall express later a lot of my concerns with this. If a law-abiding citizen like this can be violated in a relatively calm situation, without breaking a single law, can't stress that enough, then what does a cop with the same type of fragile ego do to somebody who's not following the law? Due process is something everybody deserves. It serves your best interest to be calm, polite, and less flippant when in this type of situation. But if our laws were respected, being disrespectful here couldn't be treated as a crime. Why is it that you can be arrested for utilizing the First Amendment on suspicion that you're utilizing the Second Amendment when you actually aren't, only for your Fourth Amendment to also be violated by the state? I'm glad he's taking it as far as he can to get justice, and that nobody got physically hurt, but things like this shouldn't happen in the first place in a country that at least claims to recognize the rights that we do. Many commenters have noted that there is no reaction whatsoever to his reaching for and display of the walking stick from either officer. Most people find this indicative that they never considered him to be dangerous in the first place and arrested him out of pure spite respect and pride. I find this hard to disagree with. He calmly yet firmly states his position that they cannot arrest or detain him for refusing to provide his ID, and yet they did it anyway. They forcibly remove his ID from him. He calmly stands there and confirms he's legally blind when asked. He explains that he had to walk to his cancelled jury duty in the dark, implying that in daylight his blindness is tolerable, while in the dark he needs the walking stick. You can tell he's pissed when he has to state that no, he doesn't need it all the time, yet he still remains quite calm. It's relevant that, in the context of criminal psychological analysis, the behavior, tone, and cadence of this man is not that of a guilty person angry that they got caught, but that of an innocent one feeling the injustice of the situation. For a fascinating juxtaposition, see JCS's guilty until proven innocent. She asks him,
Alright, Mr. Hodges. Was that hard?
clearly an attempt to psychologically dominate him. He doesn't take her shit. Watch the officer's response.
It's gonna be. I want your name and your badge number.
You know, I put him in jail for resisting.
Ooh, I really don't like using the term pig, but you're really pushing it, Porky. Get over yourself. You don't get to arrest people for utilizing their Bill of Rights. Maybe save your department and justice system the trouble by arresting the people who actually deserve it.
Have a seat.
You wanna pick my property up, please?
I sure will, after you have a seat.
You wanna pull this out of my back pocket?
Sure. Here, I'll grab your jacket for you, too.
Is this the voice of a polite public servant, or is this the voice of a prideful person who just caused herself a lot of trouble because she couldn't swallow her pride? If I were in this situation, you probably wouldn't see me behave as this man, because that's just not who I am. I wouldn't call him an arsehole, but legally speaking, it's within your right to be an arsehole. He was a downright gentleman compared to some of the videos I've seen, and got worse treatment in the end. What he said wasn't even offensive to anybody who doesn't have a pathetically fragile ego. I'm sure we can all agree in the end that people with pathological I need to be right disease should stay far away from a badge, and that this behavior has no place in any police department. There are some straight up bootlickers in some of the comments. Listen, I get that it serves our best interest to be polite, but everybody has rights regardless of how polite they are. This man's crime was nothing more than making these sensitive officers mad, and he did that by being justifiably fed up with them doubling down, despite the fact neither of them truly considered him to be a threat. If you didn't do anything illegal, you shouldn't get punished for it. Plain and simple. Respect police, but also understand that they're not perfect and absolutely can oppress you and should be held accountable if they do. Also, f***ing hell, just to find the original video took longer than it should have. I despise these channels that cut up footage without linking to the original, and the fact that the boomer media gets algorithm priority every time I search pretty much anything. I'll let you draw your own conclusions. Link in the description.
You don't have to be a dick to me.
Well, you're being one to me.
Wrong answer, sir. Well, it turns out you actually can't arrest someone for hurting your feelings. Several commenters I saw said he got $2 million in a cash settlement. Many alleged the officers were fired, but apparently this isn't the case, as it's been a year and the settlement still hasn't been met, and I'm finding conflicting information on whether or not the officers were only given administrative leave. Either way, no matter the price to pay for justice, I hope justice will be served, and that this behavior will get weeded out of not just Columbia County's police, but any and all law enforcement organizations everywhere. I have seen a lot of police body cam footage on YouTube. There are plenty of channels whose purpose it is to essentially have an eye on the law, making sure that, you know, these aspects of, I guess, history in a way, but any sort of incidents are documented and released to the public. And a lot of times you just end up with like some random local police force and whatnot. Good police departments will, after a certain period and considering some of the laws, they will decide to release footage of events that occur. How do you say that word? But they'll release footage. They'll body cam footage specifically, sometimes dash cam footage from police vehicles and the police themselves. They're released to the public with the intent to inform the public, and oftentimes it helps with PR when it comes to a police force that maybe is receiving, I don't know, it's part of just the integrity of the police force, I reckon, is that it's like when an incident happens, we show the entire thing, good or bad, then you can sort of draw your own conclusions as to whether or not you think we dealt with it well. I've watched a lot of these videos in my time, for the most part, and this could be that it's because they released them, that it's like they cherry pick, so in situations where the cops are at wrong, you don't see those situations because they don't want those to be viewed by the public for like damage control purposes and what have you. Like, I've watched a lot of these videos, and in most cases you see cops doing exactly what their job entails, which is being as patient and forgiving, just really giving people as many chances as possible. No. Their job isn't to give as many chances as possible and to let people get off scot-free, it's to protect the innocent from the dangerous people who threaten their safety, and to serve both the innocent, the not-so-innocent, and the dangerous with the service that is required of them given their unique predicaments. For example, when I myself was technically arrested, I was given some very kind treatment because I was a sobbing kid that mere moments ago could have been staring down the barrel of a scary black rifle. But that's a story for another day. Once I'd calmed down, I was given a harsh talking to, where my feet were held to the fire. I was told that I was taking my parents for granted, because if they didn't care, they wouldn't show up to pick me up personally. That officer showed me service both by being patient and kind with me when I was clearly distressed, and by giving me some harsh yet entirely truthful words to take to heart when I clearly needed them so desperately. That's the kind of discipline I needed at the moment, and that discipline was just as much of a service to me as it was to the owners of the property I was caught trespassing in, which may be controversial to some who think that violence in any form is bad. Indeed, I think violence in itself can be a form of service, the defining factor of course being what that violence is attempting to achieve. To put it simply, as a libertarian, I believe in the non-aggression principle. Violence isn't inherently bad. In fact, it can be good so long as it's to prevent aggression from taking away the life, liberty, and ability to pursue happiness of an innocent victim. That's why I believe that the police are not a necessity. They can protect those who need it from those who insist on being dangerous. And the dangerous ones, as I will now give an example of, can also be served with an immense amount of grace, forgiveness, and tough love. That's what I was thinking when I said as many chances as possible. I saw a video of a policeman who was dealing with this guy who was having drug issues, and he was really just trying to help him out, and he ended up back at his own house. It was the same cop who was called on scene to a school that this guy had walked into for whatever reason. He was just generally tweaking. I've seen some really good body cam documentation of good police work, police who are benefiting the community by doing what they're doing, removing threats when needed, dealing with irate citizens. I've seen some good police work, and it's not often. I don't know if I've seen, I could probably count on one hand, is what I'm trying to say, the amount of situations I've seen where it's that, the moment that I see it, I'm like, that actually looks really cringe. But this was one of them where it was they said that it looked like a gun in his pocket, and he whips it out at him, and he's just does it look like a gun to you? It's obviously a guiding walking stick thing. He says, as he's standing there, this is a Fourth Amendment violation, because they essentially ask him for ID, and he's like, I don't have to give you my ID. But there was another video where a man, that one was a little bit more confusing, because maybe there's more context that could potentially explain. I had to search really hard to find this video. No wording of man gets arrested for exhaling a ticket seemed to do the trick. Too many such cases, I suppose. It wasn't until I looked through my screenshots folder around this date that I found some breadcrumbs for the research I needed to find the video. Link in description, you're welcome. In the first one, I was like, I don't think there's any context that justifies this, and I don't think you should get arrested for being rude to an officer, because that's within your freedom of speech. And I don't think you should be rude to officers, but I do think it's within your right. In the same way that I don't think you should just generally be rude to people, but it is within your right. It's what freedom of speech is all about. These are officers of the law. They are representing the state, and yet they are arresting this guy for just being angry, which is not a crime. It's actually very justifiable that he was angry. But in the same way that I dislike having a culture, actually, probably more so, it's I dislike that we have sort of a culture that is moving towards being anti-freedom of speech. But I think having a culture against freedom of speech has negative consequences. A culture that dislikes people saying things that offends them. Which, that's everyone, but people essentially trying to make it so that they cannot say things through other means than as to just be like, wow, that's offensive, I'm gonna move on with my day. People attempt to ruin people's lives over saying two-syllable words and things of that nature, that it's just, I don't think that has good consequences, and I talked in great detail about that in the previous stream. Having the state police speech, literally when it's I am a representative of the state, and it's as if you have committed a crime against me by you simply being frustrated. Well, for one thing, it's not illegal to film cops, especially in a public area. There are single-party consent states, and that's one thing. it's an entire other deal with being in the public square, and cops all the time will just get pissed because they're being held accountable by the public, and that's unacceptable. The negative reactions to being recorded or for demanding a badge number and what have you is probably born of a fear and self-protective instinct. I think there are a lot of criminals that have behaved in this way just to make their jobs harder, so these cops are conditioned to a certain type of behavior. Due to the resulting warped perceptions, they end up thinking that anyone who behaves that way warrants more force or an arrest. But these disproportionate reactions are unbecoming of an officer, and it's sad to see so much of them now. Turning off and or deleting body cam footage, essentially it's a court-martial, I think. I think we should deal with the cops in a similar way as we deal with the military, in that I'm not saying we should militarize the police force, which is like, opposite of that, but in that there should be some sort of a thing like a court-martial, in that it's like, you can never be on the force again in any capacity whatsoever due to your previous actions, because you have not reflected very well on the work that we try to do. I think that should absolutely be something that is done. He writes him a ticket, and he gives him a ticket. He's like, here, I got you a ticket for doing this, this, and this. And then it's like the guy just like exhales, essentially. He's like, because like that's what happens a lot of the time, especially when it's a ticket. It's like, no one is ever happy to be given a ticket. No one is ever happy to have to pay a fine or to spend time contesting something. Essentially, by giving a ticket, you have inconvenienced this person. You know, sometimes they deserve to be inconvenienced. Sometimes it's like, yeah, you were endangering the lives of people. You weren't doing something up to the standard that we expect from the citizenry. Therefore, you should probably, you know, learn a little bit of a lesson here so you can drive safer in the future, etc., etc. In all cases, regardless, no matter if they deserve the ticket or not, you have inconvenienced them by giving them one. And sometimes it's sort of their own fault that they were inconvenienced in that way. At the same time, they have to deal with it now. So it's of course natural to be frustrated when you get a ticket, and to exhale is like one of the most unoffensive responses to getting a ticket that you could possibly have. And this cop is like, why'd you laugh? Why'd you laugh? And he just like arrests him essentially just for laughing. Why should we have like do we need a law firm to sit here and like sue cops and to try and hold them accountable? And yes, we should have those, but wouldn't it be better if we had cops that were actually well trained, that didn't do that type of thing in the first place? Wouldn't that be far more beneficial, so it doesn't take up time, manpower, blood, sweat, tears, and taxpayer dollars, most importantly, which is effectively just another way to say blood, sweat, and tears. It's just stolen blood, sweat, and tears. Wouldn't it just be better if we had cops who weren't gonna have an attitude? Some police forces obviously have better reputations than others. Having a force that has a good reputation, where they know each other and they hold each other accountable and everything. Whenever someone's doing wrong, obviously we're not just gonna like let them get off because we're friends and whatnot, but having that sort of friendly relationship between the citizenry and the police, that it's like, you know, as a father, you'd just take your kids over to the police station so they understand the police and the police understand them. You know, that to have a relationship sort of with the force is a very beneficial thing, because I think it helps humanize everyone involved to each other. I think I essentially said my piece on that, though. Not for a militarized police force in any sense of the imagination. In fact, I'd rather it just essentially be as anti-aggression as possible. You are not... You are there to de-escalate, my friend. You're not there to escalate or to cause people problems. You are here for the sole purpose of de-escalation and to ensure that nobody else gets hurt, like, as much as possible. Like, if there's a victim and a perpetrator, ensure that there is no loss of life between both of them. But if necessary, neutralize the threat. Just as a fundamental part of the system. You're not here to have your ego hurt. I think that should be part of the training, is to have a bit of a strong ego. I'm not just gonna get offended by someone being insubordinate or whatever you want to say. I'm just gonna do my job. And that's the reason I couldn't do it myself. My ego is fine, but I'm sensitive, and I think that precludes me from being able to do that job. Now, is it morally okay for me to say that I want to define the parameters and requirements for the job when I'm not qualified to do it myself? In a word, yes. I'll elaborate with some examples. I'm not a surgeon, but I know the purpose of a surgeon is to operate smoothly upon their patient, to fix what's wrong with their body as medically necessary, to ensure their safety as much as scientifically possible, with the best medical technology as is available to them, with complete transparency to the patient or their caring parties so they can ensure that the surgery is right for them in the first place, and that they will make as speedy a recovery as is realistic to their condition and the surgery in particular. I'm not a doctor, but I know the purpose of one is to give me realistic, accurate, and scientific medical advice to maintain the machine that is my body and look out for its health. I'm not a gourmet chef, but in the very least my tongue knows the difference between a culinary masterpiece and a literal sandwich. Police work is no different. The nitty-gritty details on all of these fields require a significant amount of instruction, knowledge, training, and experience that I may not have, so perhaps I can't say precisely where any given officer screwed up, legally in their jurisdiction or morally, and perhaps I can't precisely say how change in our justice system should occur universally. Perhaps I can't even say that these prospective changes would have the effect that I desire. Indeed, perhaps they could lead to a worse system. But I can tell the difference between justice well served and the blatant miscarriage of it. Even if our solutions are different, and our reasoning behind them are conflicting, I'm sure we can all agree that people shouldn't be able to be arrested for being rude. In the land of the free. I'm sure we can all agree, besides the fringe groups that I touch on briefly, that the role of the police or executive branch as a whole should be to ensure justice, and that innocent people get what they deserve, without individuals representing the state being guilty and bad in and of themselves. If your doctor isn't doing their job right, find one that will. If your chef serves you a shit sandwich, dine elsewhere in the future and let others know of your experience. If your entertainment isn't entertaining, replace it with something that is. If the system is broken, fix it. Worth noting is that sometimes these things take too long. It's easier for me to say the system's broken and fix it, but actual solutions take a lot more time to actually put into effect. Perhaps to some, much of this goes without saying, but it's a universal principle I believed in that I wish to detail.
It's definitely sad to see that it's just like, not only have we got people who literally don't understand freedom of speech to the extent that, I don't know, people would just be like, I'm pro freedom of speech, but you shouldn't be allowed to say slurs on Twitter. And I would have it so that Like, I don't know, if I owned literally any platform, Twitch, Twitter, I would just have a fundamental freedom of speech. Like, if the content is illegal in the United States, I don't know, it'd be interesting to have, like, maybe a Twitch that isn't, like, literally has no community guidelines except for to avoid...
I was going to say here, avoid illegal content such as violent calls to action that aren't protected by freedom of speech.
You know what's interesting to me is that you can be popular on Twitter and then, like, you get a decent streaming start off of that. I don't know why that just came into my mind. Oh, well, I do. I just don't know if I want to go into explicit detail about this particular person. There was someone on Twitter that I found funny and then realized that they were kind of insane. I don't know, they were really young though. It's just tough when it's like, okay, chill with the political extremism. Let's keep that at a minimum, you know? Yeah, but that person was just like some random... I think she might have been like 14 or something. I just saw like some funny tweets about like dumb memes and whatnot. No, I think she was 16. But she would talk about a lot of things and then just one day was just like, yeah, no, I'm insane. And I was like, okay, that's not really someone I want to emphatically follow anymore. But it was interesting to see the relatively large audience from like just being some like FNAF random person just made a bunch of like funny reply guy on Twitter. Okay. It's interesting to me that you can advocate violence for others on Twitter without getting banned or reported to authorities for literally doing something illegal. And then people also defame people on Twitter. And then it's like, oh, Elon Musk banned people for using his name and profile picture and then saying things that he wouldn't want associated with his image. Well, that's not even the fundamental reason why he did it. Bombs are key bombs. Fundamental reason why I did that was because you probably shouldn't be allowed to impersonate people. Ethan Klein goes on Twitter, has his profile picture and name set to Elon Musk's, so it looks like he's Elon Musk, and then he was like, I think Jeffrey Epstein was a good person. Why would you want that think about, like, if someone made an account that said something as terrible as that, you wouldn't want that associated with you. That's literally defamation, and there's a good reason for that to be against the terms of service. Yeah, it's funny, but people need to know that it's parody when we're in that sort of a scenario. So let people know that you're a parody account, or else you're probably gonna get banned for saying things that shouldn't be associated with the actual accounts and or people and or corporations related to who you are impersonating. You can have some lighthearted fun, but it's kind of an issue when you do crap like that. And these are the same people who are anti-freedom of speech in general, by the way. So it's like, my sympathies are limited when you are a blaring hypocrite. Ooh. It is interesting to see what you can get away with if you're on the quote-unquote right side. And I think both sides have their blind spots where it's like, oh, this person agrees with me politically, so I have this positivity bias for them, so therefore I'm just gonna ignore when they do bad stuff or try to hide the truth when they do bad stuff, like it's BTS.
For context, I was referring to an at-fault accident caused by Jungkook of BTS. The accident wasn't really a big deal at all, as neither party was injured, but because some people don't believe in accountability for their idols, the fans of BTS that give themselves a bad name took to Twitter to drown out the negative press with a tumult of spam in order to protect the singer's reputation. My video would have gone in depth into more of my moral qualms with this type of behavior.
I think I was gonna make a video based around that idea. I think I've got like the OCD level of like, I have to get it right, but I also have got the ADHD of like, I really just can't be bothered to care. So when you combine those, you just end up not doing anything whatsoever. And it's like, well, yeah, isn't that excellent?
Not that I don't care, it's that I don't set aside the time to take such a project seriously due to lack of conviction without Adderall. I'm thinking post-Adderall I may have committed to it. It seems perfectionism is sometimes the enemy of progress. At least that's a demotivation I've struggled with for many years. Pro tip to ADHD folks, get medicated, it may make you much happier.
I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I'm sure there are some things that I was like, yeah, no, Ethan is justified in this situation, or I'm not sure where I land on that, or I don't really mind so much, but he's become such a hypocrite in the last little, I guess like just pandemic ruined him or something. I just broke Twitch TOS by talking about other people. Actually, he's not on Twitch and hasn't been for ages because of Twitch's issues, so it's fair game. Can I talk about people who've been banned? Can I talk about Levy? There are many a hypocrisy moment that I don't even need to get into with Ethan Klein. And I'm like, I try to be forgiving of everybody, just in general, but it is interesting. I don't know if he has anybody's back necessarily. Give us a kiss. Oh, that is something to share on stream. I will share that for another time. If any VOD viewers in the distant future are wondering, ask about the Jaws incident of 2022. That was quite the scenario. OBS is looking interesting. It's crazy to see back in some of my old like 2016, 17, even 18, I think. Some of those streams were just done in like regular old OBS on a laptop that was ill-equipped to be streaming on a internet speed that would give me no good results. I was in over my head, but I wanted to do it so bad.
Well, that's a bit of an inconclusive note to end on. I guess I'll say that now I run my streams quite adequately on a technical level. Again, if you'd like to see them, I've got a VOD archive channel and my Twitch to have a peek at. We do a bit of gaming, a bit of discourse, and a whole lot of rambling throughout everything because that's just who I am. Anyhow, for future reference, this channel may be somewhat inactive for long periods of time. I'm either working on a film review for this channel, on stream highlights for the second channel, on my streams and archiving, or just suffering in my offline life. Either way, thanks for going on this journey with me. I shall now take my leave.
Mm-hmm.